have a special question and answer programme on the backdrop to all this right now, the UK heatwave. We'll do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can before 8 p.m. But let me introduce you, first of all, to our panel of guests to answer those questions that you've been sending in all day. We've got Dr. Frederick Otto, a senior lecturer in climate science at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change and former associate director of Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute. Also Professor Dame Helen Stokes-Lampard, Chair of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges and a practising GP in Lichfield. Joanna Robinson, Sky News meteorologist, and Tom Heat, presenter of Sky News' weekly climate show. Welcome to you all, and thank you very much indeed for agreeing to ask our audience's questions about what is going on, what will continue to go on at the moment. So let's kick off with our first question. This one for you, Joanna, from Boy, who asks quite simply, why do heat waves happen? Tell us about the meteorological background.
Of course. Well, we need areas of high pressure. High pressure brings us settled conditions, and with those settled conditions, we can see the temperatures rising day on day in the summer. With the sun, at its strongest, we can see day on day temperature rises with high pressure. We have the Azores high. It can move in across western parts of Europe and affect the UK. Now, if that high pressure system stays across the UK for long enough, we can see those day-to-day rises, like I just said. The air is sinking down into the high-pressure system. That's rising the temperatures further. But to see the extreme heats like we've seen today and yesterday, we need to tap into some very hot air. So that's when we need a southerly wind. The high pressure needs to be in the exact right position to draw in the heat from Africa and across other parts of Western Europe into the UK. That's when we see those extreme heat conditions. So heat waves, they do occur naturally, but we are seeing, as global temperatures rise due to human activity, we are seeing increasing more frequent heat waves, longer and more intense heat waves like we've seen today. So the Met Office do have a way of, they have a definition for a heat wave, and that uses certain thresholds across different areas of the country. So you need to have at least 3 days to be a heat wave, and temperatures in, say, London area need to reach 28 degrees or more, and then other parts of the country, say Scotland, need to be 25 degrees or more. But yes, high pressure is what we need, and sometimes we get a blocking pattern. So high up in the atmosphere, we can get this blocking pattern, so the high pressure system doesn't move, and then we get this kind of heat dome, so the heat just builds. So that's how we get heat waves.
OK, Joanna, thanks. So that's the why. And this then about the future. Dr. Otto, I wonder if you could deal with this for us. From Melissa, are we to expect more wildfires in the UK due to the heat like we are seeing in Europe?
Yes, is the very short answer to that question, because fire weather conditions are basically made up of 3 components. So one is high temperatures. Third one is low humidity or just dry conditions, and then the third one is wind. And even if, well, the wind situation is not changing very much with climate change, and because of the temperatures, every time there is a heat wave now, temperatures are hotter than they would have been without climate change, and also we see many more heat waves. So we will just see many more of these fire weather conditions in the UK, and we have already seen an increase in the last years in wildfires spreading around the UK. So this is definitely one of the consequences of this very strong increase in heat waves that we see. OK, that's pretty clear. This one for you, Professor Stokes-Lampard. Angie asks, why do people keep dying in waterways? I mean, it is such a sad feature. It always happens in hot weather. Is it simply that they can't swim? Is the water too cold? Is it the currents? Is there a medical explanation? Cold water's one reason, isn't it?
It's a combination of factors. Cold water is certainly one of them, and cold water shock, people jumping into water expecting it to be tepid and then discovering it's bitterly cold still for lots of reasons about the way that water is slow to warm up. But also, a lot of people who die are often young and enthusiastic and rather adventurous, and they're leaping into waters that they don't know what's down below. So they're not swimming in places they're used to swimming in. Not many people get into trouble in a swimming pool or in a sea situation where there are lifeguards around. This is people in unsupervised waterways taking a chance because it looks so inviting. There are often, and in those sort of waterways, there are often obstacles just under the water. So people jump in and literally injure themselves because of obstacles under the water. Currents are certainly a problem. So in rivers and streams and in estuaries, currents can really take even the strongest swimmer by surprise. So there are a whole myriad of things, but basically the human condition is such that water looks so tempting to us when we're desperately hot. But please never jump into water, get into water that you don't know what's there, that isn't safe and isn't tested. Never, ever go swimming alone in these situations, and try and find other ways to cool off and stay safe.
That's very sound advice. Another feature of what we've been seeing, Tom, you take this one on, and it is the travel disruption. It seems too hot, too cold. We never seem to get it just right. We've been hearing from Network Rail today about the amounts of rail travel that's had to be curtailed. Rex asks, I've travelled all over the world to far hotter countries than the UK, and their buses, trains and planes all run fine and their roads don't melt. Why are we so awful at dealing with weather extremes? What do you think?
Well, the clue there is kind of in the question. He goes to far hotter countries. So those countries will be dealing with heat far more often, far more of the time. We are blessed, or if you like, cursed in the UK with weather that can vary a lot, not only throughout the year, but between different years. And the slightly harsh fact is that resilience costs money. So if you're going to make your railway tracks resilient to 40 degrees centigrade plus, that's going to cost some money. And how often are you going to get those temperatures? Now, we may take the decision that we're going to see more of them, so that is an investment. And we have seen the same thing, albeit not recently, in not that long ago, decades or so past, 5 years past, when we've had very heavy snowfalls, and people ask, why haven't we got the gritters? Why haven't we got the snowplows? Or at Heathrow, de-icers. That's not that long ago, I remember that. And, the truth is, once again, that costs money. So it is a slight balance between what we are prepared to pay for resilience, which you might not need for 5, 10, maybe more years. So if you want to be able to be sure that everybody can travel all the time on our public transport or even on our private transport on the road network, it's an investment to do that. And that is a political and economic, in the end, a sort of public decision about where we think our priorities should lie.
I see, and if you don't, then when it comes to the extremes, then be prepared for the disruption. Thanks, Tom. Tel asks this one, Helen Stokes-Lampard again, I think this one's for you. What can be done for asthmatics in this heat at work, especially if they have no air conditioning? We do know a lot of people have real difficulties. Is it the pressure, the dry air, or what?
So asthma is one of a whole range of lung conditions, and almost all of them are adversely impacted in extremely hot weather. They're also impacted when pollution levels are higher. And this is a classic one where nearly every aspect of climate change is bad for the planet, is bad for our health. So it is in all our interest to be addressing the climate change challenge. But specifically this question about people with respiratory difficulties in the workplace, you really need to be speaking to your line manager and occupational health if you have respiratory problems and exceptional weather is coming, and asking for every dispensation possible to work in a cooler environment. Obviously, all employers have a responsibility to do their best to keep workplaces as cool and as safe as possible to ensure that you are safe and protected. That is your responsibility as an employer. Certainly making sure you have your inhalers with you. If you are affected by hay fever, make sure that you are up to date with your antihistamines and you're taking them. These are simple, straightforward things, but doing everything that you can to help yourself, making sure that you're using cool cloths and flannels to wipe yourself down, and lots of cold drinks will help. But at the end of the day, if your health is being impacted by the heat at work, speak to your manager and get out to there and get to a cooler place. You do not want to risk an asthma attack or a worsening of your breathing conditions. It's not, it's frightening, it's dangerous. And we've been speaking earlier about the most vulnerable in society. Actually, if you've got a chronic lung condition, you are vulnerable right now and you need to take it seriously, please.
Yeah, and just following on from that, then we hear, though, the pressures then that is putting on the emergency services when it comes to hospitals, just this increase in 999 calls when, as we know, the health service is already under such intense pressure.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I have to say the amazingly good warnings that we've had from our meteorological colleagues over the past fortnight have meant that the NHS, like the other emergency services, have stepped up and pulled out all the stops yet again to build up the resources so that when the extra calls and demands came, that we were ready for it. And most hospitals and most GP surgeries have actually coped very well. There are some exceptions, often where systems have fallen down or people have been off sick themselves. But generally, the public have been as responsible as they can be, and the health service has really amazingly done it yet again. We're not through it yet. We've got another probably 24 hours, 36 hours until the impacts are easing, because obviously there's a lag after the weather, the temperatures start to fall before the health effects the risks are passing. But this is going to become a more recurrent pattern. And this is something about protecting our whole system. We need more resilience in our NHS and emergency services. This isn't a one-off. I think we would be very naive if we think, well, we survived the great heat wave of 2022. This is a recurrent problem. We need to plan and prepare for it. We need an NHS that can be working throughout this system. I mean, we have myriad problems with storage of medications. Obviously, the heat on our patients, the heat on our staff, but our IT and infrastructure is struggling. There are many stories of scanners and testing equipment falling over and computers shutting up shop because they're a bit aged. And also our buildings in the NHS. Our estate was not built for this sort of weather. I personally work in a GP surgery built in the 1980s. Most of the building has no air conditioning. It's terribly insulated. So it's like a complete oven in there. And the number of patients who I saw yesterday who were lamenting how hideous it was being in the surgery. And I did feel for them. I didn't gently like to point out that all of us had been working in it all day. But yeah, it's not great. There's a long way to go.
Yeah. Got a question for you, Joanna. Thanks for that, Helen. A question for you, Joanna, following on from some of the practical advice that Dame Helen was giving there, and Gavin wants some more practical advice. Poor Gavin lives in a top floor flat, can't open his windows because one of his cats tries to climb out, except for fans and cold showers. How can I keep myself and my flat cool, he asks. Is there any more advice you can offer, Joanna?
Oh, it's so hard to try and keep yourself cool, especially when at night time temperatures, last night didn't fall below 25 degrees in some places. It is very tricky. The advice is actually in the daytime to actually have your windows closed, your curtains drawn and your blinds down. You don't want to be bringing in that hot air from outside into your house. So the advice is to actually have your windows and doors closed during the daytime and then to open them in the evening to let that cooler air in. But you can't open the windows, and so it is hard. But if you have a fan, there is advice to perhaps have a bowl of cold water with ice in it and to put it in front of the fan, and that can act a bit like an air conditioning unit. It will bring cooler conditions across the room that you're in with the fan and the ice cold water. Other ways to cool yourself down, there's things like cool water on your wrists, having your feet in cool water. I mean, obviously, it's important to keep hydrated as well, so drinking plenty of water as well. So those are some of the ways that you can try and keep cool, but it is quite tricky when the temperatures are so high.
Duly noted. Stay with us. We're going to take a short break now. Thank you very much indeed. You're watching a Sky News question and answer special on the heat wave. As I say, more questions coming up next, including advice for autistic children in this unprecedented heat wave. Good evening. Well, you don't need telling, it's never been this hot in the UK, and tonight a major incident has been declared in London. Fires are burning on the outskirts of London after the heat caused grass fires, which then spread to some homes and businesses. From Wennington in Greater London, Laura Bundock reports on a village that has found itself on the front line of the climate crisis.
Thick black smoke rose up from the village, and below the fire ripped through buildings. Flames so fierce and so high, nothing could stop them, spreading with dangerous and terrifying speed.
It started in Wellington Green, caught fire and compost heap. The wind's not helped, fanned flames. It's gone right across the village, taken out everyone on the green, it's taken out the church and slowly weaving its way along the main roads.
Fanned by wind but fuelled by brittle dry ground, this fire was impossible to stop.
So it's been really scary, and I was even tearing. I was crying. My little one was crying as well.
Blessing was at home with her 2-month-old baby when the police told her to leave.
I don't even know what to say because I've never seen. I used to see this kind of fires on TV. I never thought in my wildest dream that it would happen to us. I've been so scared, but thank God we've seen some passerbys who've been giving us water and stuff.
The whole village was evacuated, leaving residents stranded and shocked.
My partner has got COPD. He can't breathe. He's not allowed out of the house. And he's panicking. So the police officer just got hold of him and we had to go out the house and he just shut the door after us.
Firefighters are used to extreme temperatures, but the ferocity of this fire was something else.
We've probably never seen weather-related incidents, particularly to do with heat, on this scale before. But we do have well-rehearsed and practiced plans in place to be able to make sure that we're prioritising our resources. As
winds changed direction, they fought to contain and control the flames, people on the ground doing all they could to help. We were warned the heat wave would bring danger, but no one expected something like this. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Well, as you know, with these record temperatures in mind, we're doing our very best to answer your questions about the UK heatwave. Let me reintroduce the panel of experts I've got with me this evening. Dr. Frederic Otto is a senior lecturer in climate science at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change. Professor Dame Helen Stokes-Lampard, chair of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges and a practising GP in Lichfield. Joanna Robinson, our very own meteorologist, and Tom Heat, presenter of Sky News' weekly climate show. Well, welcome once again. Let's crack on with these questions. So many different aspects of what's going on to address from our audience. Been sending questions in all day. Alex asks this, and it relates to us in the media, I suppose, asks, is the media slightly exaggerating all this? Seems like a normal summer to me, doesn't it, Alex? What do you think, Dr. Otto? Normal summer?
No, it's not a normal summer. Temperatures of 40 degrees in London would have been basically impossible only a few decades ago. And even now, it's still a rare event. But because we have burned fossil fuels for the last centuries and have increasingly fast done this the last few decades, these temperatures are now possible. There would have been a heat wave without climate change, but it would not be as hot as this one. And also, we are not just seeing a heat wave in the UK right now. We are seeing heat waves across Western Europe, the US, North Africa. We've seen heat waves in China. We've seen heat waves in South Asia earlier this year. And it's not just this year. It was the same last year and the year before. So heat waves have become much hotter, more frequent than they would have otherwise been. So this is what will be a normal summer if we don't stop burning fossil fuels. But at the moment, this is still an extreme event, but one that is possible now. It would not have been otherwise.
And even if we did, just to follow on about how long it's all going to take, Dr. Otto, even if we did stop burning fossil fuels entirely right now, which of course is not going to happen, because of the centuries you've described with it all building up, presumably it's going to take several decades at the very fastest for it to go down again.
It won't go down. So if we would stop burning fossil fuels now, then global temperatures would basically stop at the level they are at now, which is about 1.2 degrees. And that would mean that the likelihood for a heat wave like this will continue to be the likelihood it is right now, which I haven't calculated the numbers yet. But other aspects, of course, like sea level rise and glacier melt and other slow reacting parts of the climate system will continue to change even when we've stopped burning fossil fuels.
OK, and following on from that then, Tom, this one from Vincible. Will it be possible to adapt how we insulate our homes then as these heat waves are here to stay? Adapt how we insulate our homes. I suppose that cuts both ways, doesn't it? I mean, it works for us in the winters as well.
It does indeed. A home that is well insulated from both heat and cold. So largely that is a good idea, whichever extreme you're facing. There are other things you can do to combat the heat, things like put canopies over windows, a bit like you see on the front of shops. That can actually have a very, very big effect on the amount of heat that comes through the windows in your house. So that's something that might be worth investigating. The thing I must say I'm personally very cautious about is the idea of installing a lot of air conditioners. Because to me, that's a bit like buying a fridge and hiding in it while your house is burning down around you. It's a very, very temporary solution. And kind of worse than that, actually, the energy used to run the air conditioners, which is nearly all fossil fueled, is worsening the climate change problem. In fact, globally, more energy is used in cooling than heating. And whilst I absolutely agree with everything Dame Helen was saying about the health risks of this, I think we have to be a little bit careful about those of us who are experiencing discomfort or a bit of sweating, reaching for the checkbook and buying an air conditioner. That was a bit of a dated reference, but reaching for the card and buying an air conditioner. I think that's something to be, something to be very careful about. Clearly, if there are health reasons why that's required, then that's important. But for the rest of us, these more passive methods that I talked about at the start, I think are the way to go, and basically endure a bit of sweating.
Indeed, nothing wrong with that. It's entirely natural. And it's a very interesting point you made there, Tom. I had no idea that more energy is consumed globally on air conditioning than it is on heating.
Yeah, and the difference is getting wider as the planet heats up, and slightly as more people kind of come to expect perfect temperatures. Which is something we didn't expect 50 years ago. So we heat more and we cool more because we're after this kind of Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold zone in the middle. Well, sometimes we might have to endure, as I say, a little bit of discomfort.
Yeah, OK, interesting. Thanks for that, Tom. A question to you, Professor Dame Helen Stokes-Lampard, from Jason. Well, yeah, I've no idea what the answer is. Going to be interested to hear what you say. What advice can you give parents of autistic children who are struggling to help their children cope? It's very difficult, isn't it, when circumstances change so radically?
Yes, children, or indeed anyone who has autistic disorders, really struggle with change. And of course, when you've got a massive change in the weather like this is a change, just like taking them to a new place is a change. So the same principles apply about a weather event as do any other event that you plan with them, which is plan. Talk about in advance what's coming. I mean, we are blessed nowadays that we get fantastic forecasts. We knew this was coming. We've known for several weeks this was coming. And so talk about what's happening and what they're likely to experience and what's going to be different. Depending on the severity and the age of the child, you may want to plan some strategies for what works to cool them down. So some of them hate certain textures, and so you may not find that the simple giving them a nice lolly or washing them down with a cool flannel as you would perhaps another child will work as well. And you may need to think possibly a misting spray of water will be something they can engage with. And getting them used to it, practicing with it in readiness is probably the biggest single thing. And obviously taking time to explain it in a way that they can best understand. For those who are very severely affected and where the communication difficulties are profound, then you work in that is the case of just trying to just cooling blankets, and you have to take over a bit more then and understand that the behavioural challenges are going to be difficult, and it's very, very hard. You know your child or your loved one best. And so planning has got to be the single biggest thing. In the same way for extreme cold weather, and I take Tom's point very much about absolutely we should be learning to live with some extremes, and a bit of sweating for those of us who are fit and well is absolutely fine, as is a bit of shivering and getting another jumper on. But for those who can't understand what's going on, and this applies to all sorts of cognitive impairment, people with dementia, another classic example, and very young children, we do have to be planning for all this, practicing for all this, and being prepared for all this. And ultimately, we do definitely need to improve our buildings estate, both obviously for the NHS, but for all of us in our domestic situation, our work environments too. OK, well, talking about planning, got a question for you, Jo, from Abby. We've talked about, I suppose, the future further out, the years to come and what needs to be done. But Abby just wants to ask about, I suppose, the next few months. Will there be further heat waves this year? She asks. What do the charts tell you? We know over the next week or so it's going to get a little bit cooler, but I suppose a few years back we regard what's coming up as a heat wave, 27, 28 degrees. Exactly that. I mentioned earlier the definition for a heat wave by the Met Office. It's, 3 days reaching 28 degrees in the southeast and 25 degrees further north, different thresholds for different counties across the UK. So, yes, what we've seen today is extreme heat that, it's not the heat wave definition that that I've just talked about. So, yes, it's certainly possible that we could see a heat wave occurring again later in the summer. We're still only in the middle part of July, so there's still time for another heat wave. You just mentioned that temperatures are likely to dip as we go through the next few days, but there are signs that temperatures will increase again early next week, not to the level that we've seen today. I'm not talking anything like that, but potentially, we just need 3 days of temperatures of 28 degrees or more, and, then that would be defined as a heat wave. So it is possible. We have already had a heat wave this summer, not to this extent like I've just talked about. But yes, we've already had a heat wave before. It is possible again through the summer. And, China, we talked about other places across the globe that have been having heat waves. China's had 3 heat waves already this summer. So it's certainly possible and something that we will keep an eye on, but I'm not expecting anything to the levels that we've seen today. It really has been a historic day with records broken. Fingers crossed, break coming our way. You're watching Sky News. You're watching a special question and answer session on the heatwave. We'll be answering all of your questions, including the thought a lot of people have: this will a hot summer lead to a cold winter? Answers coming your way next.
Climate change is with us and it's becoming critical. But the fight back is on. Coal is under fire, whereas wind power is booming. You can now have burgers made out of these rather than those, and no need for fuel, just rely on the vital spark. I'm Tom Heap, and I'm joining Sky News for special weekend editions of The Climate Show, where we'll meet the people hit by the crisis and also those delivering crafty solutions. In the end, the question is, can we reach a world that isn't based on burning stuff? Find out on The Climate Show on Sky News.
It blows your mind, as you said, that we can look back, and we're going further back. We're going back to 13.5 billion years ago, and you think of that, this light has been traveling at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second for 13.5 billion years. So we're capturing the light from the formation of the first galaxy after the beginning. We're learning a lot more about the universe, certainly how large it is. Ultimately, who are we? What are we? How did we get here? What are the things? Are there others out there? This telescope is so precise that we're going to be able to analyze the chemicals on other planets revolving around other suns and determine if it's a habitable atmosphere. Hubble is mainly the optical, what you see with your eye. This is able to look back through all of the space cosmic dust because we are capturing infrared light. Infrared light is a much longer light wave, and it is not held up by the cosmic dust. And so that's how we're seeing further. It was an extraordinary experience. When you look out, you're not seeing much more than what you're seeing from the face of the Earth. However, what is astounding is looking back at the Earth. As you orbit the Earth every 90 minutes, I flew as a member of Congress. As a politician, I was struck by what I saw because I didn't see racial division. I didn't see political division. I didn't see religious division. I saw that we're all in this together as citizens of planet Earth.
Welcome back. Now, most of the UK has been sweltering on the hottest day ever recorded. Over 34 locations in total exceeded the UK's previous temperature record of 38.7 degrees Celsius. The country's hottest ever temperature, 40.3 degrees C, recorded in Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Scotland recorded its hottest day on record. The temperature reached 34.8 degrees Celsius in the Scottish borders, according to provisional Met Office figures. Well, Sky's Caterina Vitozzi reports on a day of record temperatures.
After the UK's warmest night came its hottest ever day. Previous heat records were smashed. Temperatures peaked at 40.2 degrees Celsius at London Heathrow and here in the town of Coningsby in Lincolnshire. It is absolutely sweltering here. Coningsby is seeing temperatures well over 40 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and now alongside London Heathrow having that title of not only being the hottest location in the UK today, but being the hottest British place on record. For people working, it's been overwhelming.
The kitchen has been quite unbearable. My business partner Robbie's in the kitchen at the moment and he's not loving life at all. I think it's probably hitting about 50 degrees in there at the moment.
As the sun beat down, unrelenting, some schools stayed shut. Transport was disrupted.
We've already paid for tickets, which we'll have to claim back. And I've just done online £231 to Glasgow, and we're told that's not running from here either.
It really surprises me because I'm from Germany, and that would never happen.
The UK government needs to step up and start preparing us for climate change and getting serious about delivering net zero.
Police urge people again to avoid diving into rivers and canals and reservoirs as the search continued for a 14-year-old boy believed to have drowned in the River Thames in West London. Across the country, everyone and everything did what they could to keep cool. More northerly cities, better used to colder weather, have adapted. In York, gritters that normally deal with icy roads were out spreading. One of those has been telling people to stay inside if they can, and the impact of that is city centres that today have looked a little bit like this, far quieter than you'd normally expect for a sunny day, with businesses that have simply decided to stay shut. This gin distillery had to stop production entirely, the first time due to heat.
It is a bit of a blow for all the traders here. Everyone must be suffering today. It normally is teeming here, and as you can probably see, it's pretty quiet. We'd normally have queues possibly forming outside the shop, not today.
Today was a day not to enjoy the sun, but to survive it. Tomorrow's cooler forecast will bring relief in more ways than one. Caterina Vitozzi, Sky News.
Well, let's get back to our panel of experts who have been answering your questions about the heat wave. We've only got a few minutes left. So, Dr. Otto, I'd like to put this one to you. From Ben, is this extreme heat a result of global warming, or is it just an improbable occurrence that is not likely to happen again anytime soon?
It is, well, every weather event, whether extreme or not, is always a combination of several causes. So there is never that there's just one single cause. So we do have here a role to play of just the natural chaotic variability of the weather system. So we have a high pressure system, we have hot air coming in from Africa. But without climate change, this heat wave would not be as hot as it is. We would not have broken the heat records in the way that we have seen today without climate change. So climate change did play a big role in this heat wave.
OK, one more, and it's this one. Yeah, well, is it true? Does a hot summer lead to a cold winter? Tom, discuss, or maybe my grandma and your grandma may have maybe better at that. Hot summer,
probably
cold
on
winter.
with Joanne. I mean, my personal view is I hope so, and I'm a little bit of an outlier on that. I actually get more upset about warm weather in the winter than I do in the summer, because I kind of like the seasonality of our climate, and also I happen to like snow and ice. That might make me weird, but it's true, and it's really there also that you can see some worrying changes in the overall climate pattern. I suspect there is no actual truth in, if you'll forgive the old-fashioned slur, the old wives' tale, that a hot summer is followed by a cold winter. But Joanne, what about you?
OK, and 5 seconds on that, Joanna. No, not necessarily a link, just people perhaps hope for one.
Yeah, I think that's come from in the past. But yeah, no, there's no link. There's no statistical proof to show that there will be a cold winter now. That's not true. OK, well, plenty of statistical proof from you all. Dr. Frederick Otto, thank you very much indeed. Professor Dame Helen Stoke-Lampard, Joanna Robinson and Tom Heap, thank you all for cracking on through all those many questions. Many more questions then remaining coming up at the top of the hour about just how hot it got, how hot it's going to stay, and also including the fires that have broken out, the wildfires that have broken out around the UK, including this particular one to the east of London. It's 8 o'clock. This is Sky News Tonight with me, Dermot Murnaghan. Wildfires break out around London as the UK records its highest ever temperature. Hundreds of firefighters battle the flames in extreme heat as a major incident is declared across London. Homes and businesses are destroyed as fields and grasslands turn into a lethal tinderbox. Ambulance trusts see a rise in 999 calls as the heatwave leads to an increase in demand. And a warning to be cautious in open water after several drownings.